Hi, I'm Pastor Quentin from the Father's House here in Hutchinson, Kansas. And my guest this morning is Madyson Bennett, and she's the clinical manager of Substance Abuse Center here in Hutchinson for most of Reno County. And just real pleasure to have you, honey. Just glad you could do this.
Thanks for having me.
I've become real aware over the last several weeks how difficult this crisis of COVID is for those going through addiction and substance abuse or any number of those things that now would simply isolate them, that these stay-at-health orders and these social distancing guidelines really just puts people that are going through these challenges, it just creates a whole nother challenge for them.
Absolutely.
It just adds all kinds of pressure. So I asked Maddie, whom I've known a very long time, and she can attest to that. She knew me back when I had some hair. And so I asked Maddie just to come and visit with us and maybe give some insight, some information, some good practices, and share with us. So when you see this, if you want to forward it to somebody, link someone to it, that's what it's there for, is to be that resource. So Madyson, just maybe start where you'd like to start about what you think folks ought to know right now, just as we're entering the 7th, 8th week of this process.
Okay. So for people in recovery, the biggest issue with kind of what's going on in the world right now is that it's a stressor. It's a stressor for everyone, but especially for people in recovery. And a lot of times it's these life stressors that kind of can be a barrier to people continuing on the path to recovery. So it's a major change for a lot of people. The shelter-in-place orders, a lot of treatment centers are currently closed. We're currently closed to the public. Meetings, gatherings, the recovery activities that a lot of people engage in, they don't have access to right now.
Right. So what would be, I assume there's resources available to them. Can you share us maybe what their resources are online or by phone or?
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave you with a whole list of resources. A lot of online meetings are taking place right now.
Okay.
Most of them are using the Zoom platform, which is an app. You can download it on your smartphone, but basically you attend a meeting virtually. So that's one thing. We encourage people, go to church. A lot of churches are doing the drive-in thing or what they need to do to practice safe social distancing while still getting people to connect.
Right. So if they were to call SAC's number, I assume there's someone there to talk to them or direct them towards various things. So
yeah, absolutely. We're doing everything right now through telehealth.
Okay.
So that's either through Zoom, if the client has access to Zoom, or just by telephone. We're doing a huge volume of peer mentoring calls right now.
Okay.
It's just calling people twice a week, checking in, seeing where they're at, how they're doing, how they're coping.
Right. So there are resources available. Is one of the things that I realized as I spoke to Madyson. And the phone number, we'll put it right there on the bottom of the screen, at 620-669-9024. Some of these other resources, I'm assuming, we'll put that on the website or something. We'll link that to this so that we don't have to go through all of them. But there are resources. You don't have to do nothing, would be the point that I think you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a ton of connections that you can make that are healthy and supportive of your recovery during this time. It's just that awareness of what they are and where they're at and how to get to them.
Before we started, you were talking to me about the importance of connections. I was intrigued by that. Can you expound on that a little bit for the audience, a little bit about what you were talking about?
Yes, I have. This actually came from a colleague of mine. It's the saying, and it's so true, that the opposite of addiction is connection. Because what we know about active addiction, which is when someone is actively using substances, is that it is totally isolating. You can be surrounded by people and you're still totally isolated, because that's what addictive substances do. They take you away from other people.
Wow.
And so the importance in recovery of connecting to other people, to other sober, supportive people, people who are doing the same thing as you, that have the same goals as you, can't be overstated.
I love that terminology you was using a while ago, that being alone, the opposite of addiction is connection. To continue to make connections. And with this stay-at-home order, these social distancing guidelines, I could see how this could be a big hurdle, because we assume that just because we have to stay at home or we have to distance, that connections aren't possible.
Right.
But connections are almost more possible now than any other time. I mean, I'm finding in what I do that I'm connecting to more people digitally
Yes.
than I ever did face-to-face. And so I really hope that folks are hearing this, is that if you struggle from some side of substance abuse, stay connecting, continue to reach out, I think was the word you were saying. And do it through phone. I'm trying to give you the best I can right here with the phone number we gave. Start there, and someone will reach out and make those connections. I find that even true for some of my older folks, some of the most vulnerable in culture, is that if I can just stay connected to them,
right,
text them, visit with them, or know somebody that knows them even. It would appear to me that if you're a sponsor somebody, you're very important right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a touchstone. And especially when we're talking about the particular population of clients I serve, because I work with some of the most disadvantaged.
Okay.
And so it's that idea that a lot of times they don't have the resources. So they may not have a smartphone. They may not have the availability to connect to Zoom or to get on an online meeting that way. But just a phone call.
Okay.
I can't overstate the importance of what a difference it can make. If someone is struggling, to hear from somebody that's supporting them in what they're doing, that can help them talk through it, it can make all the difference. It can be the difference between continuing in recovery versus going back out.
Slipping out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that this reaches not only people struggling with addiction, but I hope it reaches people that know someone struggling with addiction. We're starting a new program, Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And one of the things I want to do, Maddie, is get this information on that website. Just Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Let's get that on the bottom of your screen, so that if we can give some ideas, not just to people struggling with addictions and they're in their recovery, but people that might be able to help someone in recovery. So what you're saying is if just a phone call to someone that you know is struggling, this is not a time to hestate.
Right. Reach out.
Help. Reach out.
And the other piece to that is, there's a saying, the phone weighs, 200 pounds, because asking for help can be so hard. And so sometimes we need someone to reach out to us.
Wow.
We need someone to take that initiative and make the call.
Wow. Very good.
So when people are in a vulnerable place and they're kind of on that cusp, that edge of, I want to stay sober, but I'm really having cravings right now. I really want to go use. Having somebody reach out to them is huge.
It's paramount.
It is paramount, because the phone never feels so heavy as when you're in the middle of that.
Right. Boy, this is a time when we need to give each other a lot of grace.
Absolutely.
I keep hearing Nick Baldetti from the health department say, this is a time to give people a lot of grace, a lot of kindness. So even if there's somebody that you know and you've called, call again.
Right.
We're in the midst of a real crisis socially, and even in our community. And the communities come together so well that these group of people can get overlooked and put to the side. And it just takes a lot of grace to go first, so to speak, and to care about that neighbor. Another word you used earlier in a conversation, which you said routine. That was interesting. About having resources available, reaching out both ways, whether you're in recovery or you know someone in recovery, and then the routine. Talk a little bit about that.
Routine and structure, particularly in early recovery, because when you think about active use, you think about how everything is scheduled around using, obtaining, recovering from the effects of the substance.
Okay.
And so in recovery, you have this huge blank space in your life when you first get in there, where I don't have this routine anymore of, I wake up, I use, I go look for more, I get the money, I do all of these things. So routine, building in structure and routine is one of the most important things that people do in early recovery.
Okay.
Right now, everybody's routine is kind of up in the air.
Destroyed.
Absolutely. I talk to people that don't have substance use issues, and they're telling me things like, oh, well, I slept in till 10 o'clock today because I didn't have anywhere to be. Or I didn't get up and get dressed today because I'm just working from home.
Right.
And it's amazing how quickly we lose our sense of routine. It's one of the reasons I get up every day and still go into the office. Because I need that routine and that structure. I need to get up at the same time. And it's true for everyone, but particularly for people struggling with addictions and early recovery. They've got to have that routine and structure.
This sounds like some real good, just good health advice. Just to stay in some sort of a rhythm of life that's healthy for you.
Right.
And for someone in recovery, particularly early recovery, even finding that routine and identifying it might be hard. But, as you know, and I know, we know people that talk about the right habits, the right disciplines, and it would seem to me that early recovery might need to identify those even more importantly during this
Absolutely.
time. That's so interesting. Just as you were talking, I'm thinking, I think I'll do a whole sermon about people staying in a routine of trying to deal with those things. One of the things I thought that was interesting about self-care, and it has to do with routine, but sometimes people going through struggles, they don't even care for themselves, let alone understand what the word self-care means.
Right.
But to value oneself enough and you were talking about exercise, or could you unpack that a little bit for me?
And it's something we encourage people, even outside of public health crises, to do, which is exercise. It is one of the greatest things that you can do for yourself in early recovery. And without getting too technical or brain science-y, because I'm not a brain scientist, it's that idea that when someone puts chemicals into their brain for long enough, changes occur in the brain.
Right.
So through a process of what's called downregulation, your brain stops naturally producing those chemicals because it's getting it from an outside source. So when people stop using substances, your brain is literally sort of screaming at you because it's missing all of those chemicals that they used to get artificially. Exercise, what that does for you is it increases those naturally occurring feel-good chemicals called endorphins. And so it can be a huge part of self-care for people, is just finding healthy, natural ways to help their brains heal.
Yep. Yeah, exercise, the right food, getting outdoors.
Sleeping.
Sleeping the right number of hours, right?
Right.
As simple as drinking a lot of water.
Yes, and not too much coffee.
No kidding. It's interesting, Maddie, because with what you do and then what I spend my time doing, I've done a lot of work on trauma recovery, how to recover from these traumas in life that come. And this crisis is an extended trauma.
It is.
Some traumas are short-term or they're short-lived, or if someone has a lapse of in the recovery, and so they begin that recovery again. It's very interesting as you help people move out of a trauma-based life.
Right.
Some people are addicted to trauma.
Yes.
So they go through another crisis, and that creates all these endorphins or whatever emotions and chemicals in our brain, and they almost get addicted to the trauma. And they don't know what to do from trauma to trauma. So I've done a lot of work in there about how one moves from a trauma-based culture into a trust-based culture. And we say some of the very same things.
Yeah.
Could we change our routine? Could we reach out and find a relationship? Could we get up and exercise? Could we begin to have really what is just a normal life where those chemicals in our body that are triggered. So if someone's been abused, if someone's lost a job, and even in this moment, you and I both know there are children that are staying at home and there aren't parents at home.
Right.
And there's these traumas inside of this trauma. And so I hope what you're hearing is that as Maddie and I are talking about recovery, a lot of the common sense things going on will work in every area of life. But particularly for those of you who are my friends and you struggle with sobriety and you're trying to recover, some of these common sense resources, routines, reaching out, establishing that kind of healthier lifestyle is so paramount right now. And Maddie, I really appreciate you coming so that people that are listening to this know that we're still engaged. Maddie's still engaged. Did you hear? She's still going to the office every day. That are still people that are taking phone calls, making phone calls. So you're not alone. You are not isolated, and you can find those connections, and you can engage. And if you don't have digital things to engage, you can engage voice to voice. And on the bottom of the screen, we're going to give you all kinds of resources. We're going to connect you to as many of those places as we can, maybe give you a hotline or two. Maddie, if you were to kind of summarize and give one or two final thoughts, do you have one or two that you thought you might do? If you just had just 5 minutes to say something to a client, to someone you care about, what might that be?
I think it would be stay connected, reach out. This is tough times. This is tough times for everybody, whether you struggle with addiction or whether you're quote unquote a normal person. And so it can't be overstated how important it is to stay connected to other people, to people that support you in your goals, to people that are doing the same thing as you. One of the gold standards of treating people with addictions is group therapy.
Okay.
And the reason it is because it connects us to each other. You can go and you can see your counselor individually, but ultimately the healing process, in my experience, I've seen it happen over and over again, is getting people in a group together that are struggling with the same sort of demon on their back, and letting them really be each other's teachers. It's huge. It's hugely powerful.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons I do what I do and why I keep doing what I do. So just connect with people.
Connect. Which brings us, this is May the 5th.
It is.
And so phases are changing, right, as we're recording this. And one of the thoughts I had this morning as I was preparing was, be sure and re-engage.
Yes.
So whenever these phases changes, and I don't know just where you guys are at, but if not this week, in the next week or two, you will be re-engaging and having groups again.
Yep.
And one of my thoughts this morning, Maddie, was to encourage people, re-engage, get back in a group.
Yes.
Don't not stay. In other words, it's going to be okay. It's healthy to. Okay, so that's kind of where I wanted to look at you and say, re-up, re-engage.
Yes.
Okay.
The door will be open. It will be open in 2 weeks. Please come back.
Okay. There you go. So about the 18th is about your
Yes.
plan. So from now the 18th, I hope we're giving you some good advice. And I just really want to encourage you to stay involved in your health. And your health is staying down that road of recovery. Maddie, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I know you got some information.
Yep.
We'll put that on the bottom of the screen.
Perfect.
Take some pictures and make that available.
Very
And
good.
so again, that number is 620-669-9024. And we're just praying for you and believing for your best.